Hi, my name is Rebecca Bradley, and today I'm going to share with you a slideshow titled Getting to Know Charles Darwin's Theory of Evolution and the Influence It Had on Psychology. I'd like to share with you a little bit about Charles Darwin. Authors Hergen and Henley, 2014, state that Charles Darwin was the one who revolutionized the theory of evolution through different aspects. The first one being that Darwin was the first to make direct comparisons with animals. Second being his theory led to some of the first examples within the developmental psychology. Lastly, his theory was said to have changed the study of psychology. Hergen and Henley, 2012, state, Darwin's ideas ultimately gave birth to a uniquely American type of psychology, a psychology that emphasized the individual differences and their measurement, the adaptive value of thoughts and behavior, and the study of animal behavior. Page 288. I believe that Darwin's theory of evolution had a focus. Darwin's focus of the evolutionary theory proposed that all living creatures derived from a biological origin and could be traced back to biological influences for changes that took place over a long period of time. I also think that Darwin's theory was an anti-God theory. Hergen and Henley, 2014, state that Darwin believed that the theory of evolution just happens and that there is no direction or purpose involved. Page 286. The mindset removed God from creation and changed the traditional view of the human nature by replacing science with faith. His quote pictured here demonstrates his perspective that has removed God and suggests that God is not in control over matters such as life and death. The Bible tells a different story, and it says that God does know when we will cease to exist by stating, "Show me, Lord, the number of my days. Let me know how fleeting my life is." Psalm 39:4. This is in direct contradiction of the theory of evolution. In the beginning was evolution. I have this here stated as a question because this is one of the biggest controversies between creation and Darwin's theory of evolution. Was creation created by a divine creator or by an accidental disaster? The Big Bang theory proposed by Darwin suggests a cosmic boom that created the solar system, galaxies, Earth, and everything in it, but that this happened over a period of billions of years, through avenues of various changes. However, Genesis 1 states that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And instead of billions of years, it only took 6 days with time to rest on the seventh. Genesis 2. Darwin's theory was in conflict with the church at the time of his theory because it was through interpretation of the scriptures that the earth was not as old as suggested by Darwin. This was just another display of science versus creation at this time in history. Human evolution was something that came up much later in Darwin's theory of evolution. This picture here shows an idea of what Darwin suggested animals went through, specifically apes, to become the humans we are today. He determined that humans descended from distant primates, but it was through his book, The Expression of the Emotions in Man and Animals, that related his evolutionary theory to psychology. In this book, emotions of people were said to have come from animal emotions necessary to survival. This sparked psychologists to study human behavior through empirical study. Survival of the fittest according to Darwin. Survival of the fittest in the eyes of Darwin is explained in this pictured quote shown here. This idea of only the strong will survive did influence Alfred Adler's theory of compensation. Hergen and Henley, 2014, give a description of compensation stating, "A person can adjust to weakness in one part of his body by developing strengths in other parts." This idea of a type of adaptation for survival was a common thread throughout Adler's theory, showing the Darwinian influence on his theory. Survival of the fittest cycle. This diagram gives a visual to Darwin's suggestion of the cycle of the survival of a species that they go through and the changes that are made through avenues such as reproduction, genetic variation, and adaptation. The favorable genes or characteristics that flourish survive with changes made, whereas less favorable changes and characteristics will die. Natural selection is another similar concept to the survival of the fittest, with adaptation being the major focus. Natural selection was used throughout and embraced Darwin's biological theory of evolution that influences psychology, specifically through sociology. The genes or characteristics that survive in a species will account for the slow changes over time. This is just another visual of Darwin's theory of natural selection and the adaptations in the Galapagos finches, which he studied, that helped develop his theory of evolution. Nature versus nurture was another suggestion that was coined through Darwin's half-cousin, Dalton, and was a controversy of what affects human development more. Is it nature, through avenues of family environment, or nurture, which relies mostly on genetic factors? This is still a controversy that goes on throughout psychology today. The development of personality is said to be affected by both natural factors and nurture factors in its development. Sociobiology is thought to have been influenced by Darwin through, even though there are some that disagree. Hergen and Henley 2014 state, the social behavior of any individual then always results from the combined influences of biology and culture, page 576. Culture can be seen as nature factor as well as nurture factor. Now I'd like to give a biblical perspective. Scripture states, "But there were also false prophets among the people, just as there will be false teachers among you. They will secretly introduce destructive heresies, even denying the sovereign Lord who brought them, bringing swift destruction on themselves." This is found in 2 Peter 2:1. I believe that Darwin's theory was a destructive heresy, but it is up to all people to be truth seekers and to continue to look for creation for answers. Since God created humans, they are the perfect specimen to study because understanding them points to a creator and will inevitably lead to God who created mankind. Shown here is just several other scriptures to where one can look to find truth. Here is a list of references that was used throughout this slide. Thank you very much for listening.